everyone, welcome to Rapid Reviews. So today we're talking about Ahsoka. We're going to talk about episodes 1 to 4. As it is with Star Wars, which is one of my favorite things, I like to do an episode by episode recap. But between travel and launching the comic book or preparing to launch the comic book, I haven't had as much time, and so I'm finally able to record something at least to talk about the first 4 episodes of Ahsoka, and I'm kind of glad that I did because episodes 1 to 3, which I'll get into a little bit, which I liked, weren't great, and there wasn't a lot to talk about. And I think by the time it gets to episode 4, there's at least something there for me. So I'm not going to do an episode by episode recap in this, as it's a rapid review, and I'm going to try to just overall talk about my overall thoughts, and then we'll get deeper into it as the season goes on and by the end of the season. But definitely wanted to share my thoughts. So far, I'm a little mixed on the show overall. I think it's one of those kind of forest through the trees things. For me, as somebody who really enjoyed Rebels and really enjoyed Clone Wars, I think this show is made for people who enjoyed those properties. There's a lot of Easter eggs from those shows. There's a lot of character development, and we're learning more about what happened after those shows finished, about characters that we grew to know and love. And so as a fan, it was really cool. There's a lot of things, moments that got me to pop. There's a lot of things in those episodes that were just, it was great fan service. But I think the issue with it early on is that I'm not sure how it's going to hit somebody who's not a huge fan of those shows. Maybe somebody who's watched all the Star Wars movies, maybe they watched The Mandalorian, but haven't kept up with all 7 seasons of the Clone Wars or all 3 seasons of Rebels. So I do think there's a bit of a challenge with the show in that I'm not sure how it's going to connect with audiences that aren't as invested as I am, or as somebody is, again, who's really enjoyed all of those other aspects of the Star Wars property. So, that being said, I think the first 4 episodes, the other issue that I had is we're building. We clearly know what's happening, which is that. And also, we're going to get a light spoiler. So if you haven't watched any of it, you may or may not want to listen to this until you've caught up with episode 4 at least, especially at the end. So just kind of a heads up on that. So it's a clear story, right? We've got on one side you have the antagonists who are seeking out Grand Admiral Thrawn. And then on the other side, you have our protagonists, Sabine, Ahsoka, Hera, who are trying to find Ezra Bridger. So if you're a fan of those properties, you know how badass Thrawn is and how amazing of a villain he is. And if you're a fan of those properties, you know that we grew to love Ezra Bridger, much like Ahsoka, who was maybe a little bit disliked early on when she was in the Clone Wars, but I think grew to be a character that people just love and adore. And so we know what this is, that they disappear together and we have no idea where they are or what's happening, and that you have these 2 conflicting groups who are trying to seek them out on some level. And then you have the conflict further with Ahsoka, who is willing to give up on the search for Ezra if it means stopping Thrawn from coming back. So clear story, and it makes sense. The issue is that, again, if you're not a fan of those properties, I don't think they did a good enough job in building Thrawn as the threat that he is. This is a world where we've had Darth Vader, we've had, for what it's worth, Darth Maul, who at least looked badass. But then, again, in future properties, actually was really, really cool. He did far more in the Clone Wars than we got in episode 1. You've got a property that has Palpatine. We've got so many interesting and cool and unique villains that, yes, just saying the name Thrawn is going to get a reaction out of fans who are deep into Star Wars lore, but just saying Thrawn isn't enough if you're somebody, again, who is not deep into Star Wars lore. So I don't think they've done so far a good enough job of building up what Thrawn is, who Thrawn is, and the threat that he poses, and that he is such a danger that we have to keep him wherever he is. We can't allow him back. So I think that part is a big issue. I do think they've done a decent job in explaining why there's this connection with Ezra. I think it could have been done a little bit better, but at least on that end, I'm okay with it. But that, I think, is the issue, is that we kind of, I don't think Thrawn has been built up strong enough, and so it just feels like, okay, what's really the threat? All right, there's a guy, and they're afraid to bring him back, but they haven't given us much background on that. So I think that's part one, and so as we're kind of halfway through the season, I'm interested to see where they go, because then the part two for me is, if Thrawn is this big of a threat, like the villains so far are fine, they're whatever. Like we've seen these types of villains in Star Wars before. They're not that interesting to me, so I'm kind of bored with them. So as a fan, I want to see Thrawn, and if we want to have a show that's really compelling, I think at this point we need to bring Thrawn in. This is a show, I don't know if it's going to get a season 2. I don't know how long or where it's going to go, but I think that we need to see that threat, and we need him to, have an impact right away, in my opinion. So I think that those are my issues through episode 4. I do like, that's not, it's not been bad. I think a lot of the action's been pretty good when we get some action. There is a lot of really good fan service. I like that it's playing around again with this, what is a Jedi? What's the relationship? Do you need to be super force sensitive to be a Jedi? What does it mean? I like that, that we're seeing Sabine have to make certain decisions, and maybe, what is she ready? Is it why is Ahsoka training her? Is Ahsoka training her to be a Jedi? Is she just training her to use her, use the Force? Like I like that they are kind of diving in a little bit into that relationship, and I hope it's not something that just gets glossed over as the show goes on. I can kind of see it going one of two ways. I could see them actually really exploring this more, or I could see them just kind of, not dealing with it. I love the idea, especially, at the end of episode 4, which I'll talk a little bit more about. I like that we have this situation where a lot of Ahsoka's worldview and personality is built around somebody who idolized Anakin Skywalker, and who lost Anakin Skywalker and eventually had to give up on Anakin Skywalker, that she had somebody very close to her. It was her mentor, and eventually she just had to give up on him. She lost him. He was done, and she had to shut that down and shut that emotional attachment. And I think she is trying to explain to Sabine that may have to happen with Ezra. You may have to give up on him. I know that this is, important to you. I know you hope you can bring him back and you can find him, but you may need to lose him. And that Sabine does not make the decision that I think Ahsoka wanted her to make early in episode 4. It makes it interesting to see where it goes. And then furthermore, when Ahsoka sees Anakin Skywalker, that changes everything, because then it's like, well, maybe she didn't lose him. Again, we don't know where this is going to go, but if she hasn't lost him, does that open her up to making it a choice that maybe she wouldn't have made earlier? I like that a lot, and I like where that's potentially going, because that does show potential for character growth and a change in what a character might have done earlier in the season. So I like where it's going there. So overall, and just to say it, the seeing Anakin Skywalker, that's awesome. I think myself included have not had the best words to say about Hayden Christensen in this performance as Anakin Skywalker. But at the end of the day, like, Star Wars is all about nostalgia, and it was really cool to hear, Hey Snips, and to see him there, and I think it's a powerful moment. It's a great cliffhanger, a great way to end that episode and kind of end, at the halfway point, which I think we are. And I love that moment, and so I'm really excited for the next episode. This is the first episode where I was really excited to see what happens next. So, I'm liking the show so far. I think the only other critique is, and it got better. I think episode 1, I did not love the CGI. I felt like it was lacking, but I think that's been mostly corrected for the rest of the show. But yeah, I think overall it's solid. It's getting there. I think the first couple episodes were more in like the 7 range, where episode 4 is probably more in like the 8.5 range for me. So it's building, which is great, and I think if it continues to build, then we might have a show that I love. So I think we're at this point where I think it could go a couple different ways, and I'm hoping it's in the hands of Dave Filoni. He's obviously he's done a lot of amazing work, and this is a character that's dear to him and that's important to him. So I'm hoping that it takes the right turn as we continue. So definitely I'm excited, but a little cautiously excited. But if you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely worth a watch if you're a Star Wars fan. If you're not a massive Star Wars fan, I'm not sure. We're going to see how things will go. It could be like Andor, which Andor started a little slow, and then it was one of the best shows on TV. Period. Not just of a big IP. So so far so good. Wish things were a little bit tighter, but it's Star Wars. I'm never going to complain about getting too much Star Wars, and I am, at least after episode 4, really excited to see what's to come. So far it's hard to rate, but I'd say the first half of the season, giving it a solid 7.5, but hopefully trending in the right direction. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, and while you're at it, leave a review. We can be found on all social media platforms at portable_whole. We can be found on all podcast platforms at Portable Whole Publishing. We can be found on the web at portablewholepublishing.com, and you can email us at portablewholepub@gmail.com.